Thank you for everyone for being here. I'm Dave Martin. I see a few familiar names in the participants list, so great to see you. And if I've not met you before, it's wonderful to have you here. We'll get straight on with things. I'm going to skip this slide, just talks about who I am. Really interested to know who is in the room. So if you could open the chat window, that would be really helpful. And in the chat, if you can just help me out, if you're a product person, i.e. you're a product manager or a product leader, if you could type product or yay or something to let me know that that's who you are, like put your hand up in the chat window, that'd be great. Thanks, Kirk. Any more of you product people? Cool, got quite a lot of product people so far, that's great. Clearly not everyone listed. So if you're in technology person, i.e. engineering or some tech leader, if you want to just type tech so I understand who's in the room, that'd be great. We've got any technology people in the room today? Cool. CEO in the room. So that's my next question. Any business leaders in the room? Any CEOs or founders? A couple of you, yeah, got it. And anyone I've not covered, what do you do? If you just type in what your focus is, maybe it's UX, maybe it's marketing, maybe it's sales. Nothing else. Cool. So we've got product and a little bit of tech. Lovely. So today is about discussing how to better action product strategy. And I'm not sure about everyone on the call, but when I think about actioning product strategy and think about where it gets really painful and difficult and where we get it wrong, it often revolves around our ability to prioritize, or in some cases, our lack of ability to prioritize. So what would be great to explore, first off, is what challenges do we see when it comes to prioritization? And typically I'm thinking more strategic level, big strategic bets rather than small backlog user story items, but you can include that kind of thing as well if that's your focus. So it'd be great to, what sort of frustrations do we have? There's a few too many on the call tonight just to unmute and shout out. So maybe you could type it in the chat window for me and I'll capture it and share it with everyone. When we think about prioritization, what frustrates you? What really creates annoyance and frustration and holds you up? There's no wrong answers, guys. Cool. So insufficient data. Thanks, Kirk. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Hear that a lot. Ambiguity, lack of discovery, lack of clear strategy. So I'll capture a few of these. So we have data. That's terrible. You can't read that at all. Let me try again. Data. What else did we say? Discovery. Missing discovery. Discovery. What else do we have? Lack of strategy, or it's not clear or not aligned. Confusing focus. Brilliant. We're getting some stuff now. Lack of business objectives. Brilliant. And what else? Feature to-do list rather than strategic outcomes. Yeah. So let's just capture that as feature factory, to borrow John Cutler's phrase. Cool. These are all brilliant and definitely things that I see regularly. So given those frustrations causing us difficulty and pain, what are the fears? What are we worried that these things will cause later on? What are your fears of these frustrations? What do they lead on to, or could lead on to? If you've just joined, please open the chat window and join in the conversation. It's going to be a two-way thing tonight. So a fear of wasting time and money. Yeah. I'll just capture that as waste. Awesome. Any other fears, guys? Displacement. Love that. Yeah. Displacement. Missed opportunity. Love it. Team frustration. Yeah. So that probably results in staff churn, I imagine, was the actual outcome of the fear. Yeah. Customer impact, not considering the above goals, results in ROI, not meeting the business pain. Yeah. So we end up not delivering the value. We fail to create value. Right. So if you've just joined, open the chat window, please. We're having a chat about these things. So far we've chatted a little bit about what's the pain around prioritization, especially at a product strategy level. And a few of the frustrations that everyone suffers, or some of you suffer, is lack of data, not being able to do good product discovery, lack of it, I'm sure, either time or something, unclear or missing product strategy, or sometimes unclear or missing business strategy, a lack of focus, management focus that was. So we're trying to do everything, which means we've got everything's a priority, which means nothing's a priority. Obsession over a to-do list of features. Somebody said, I captured it as feature factory. And then we move talking about fears, and the fears that you've shared so far is, we have a potential waste of time and money, which really, that's very significant, especially in these times of where we've got more economic constraints than in the past. We definitely can't be affording waste. Displacement, missed opportunities, staff churn, and I failed to create value, which was my summarization of a larger feedback. Great, so let's move on. We understand the challenges. I had a few saved up just in case, so I'll just quickly go through those. The things I see a lot, and I coach product leaders in all sorts of different companies. I mainly work with scale up Series A up to Series C kind of businesses in the startups scene. Well, they're not really startups at that point, but you get the stage I'm on about. And I also work with IPO tech firms. And the challenges I see regularly with people I work closely with over the last 3.5 years I've been doing this coaching work. The problem I see very regularly is everyone has a different view of the best way forwards. You look around, if you're a chief product officer, you're a CPO, you sat on that exec team, you look around that table, and everyone has a different view of what the best thing is. They've all got their own agendas of what they think we should be doing, and that's a real challenge. We aren't aligned, so that's a big challenge. It's so easy to get distracted. I see people get distracted a lot. You mentioned a lack of focus. That's another way of saying easy to get distracted. It's super simple to let the next shiny thing become our attention, or perhaps the loudest voice, some loud voice from a particular customer making a lot of noise, making us believe we've got a serious problem when we haven't. It's really easy to allow that to happen. And then you've all mentioned this as well, which is awesome. Strategic direction. First, we need to make sure we have a strategic direction. If we haven't got one and we're not aligned on it, that's a problem. But also when we do have that and when we achieve it, we often end up trying to dictate the solution with trying to take the strategy through a solution. And that's no good. The challenge, we've got to try and make sure we set the strategy without dictating a solution, which refers to you mentioned the feature factory type of issues. We've got to do that. Otherwise, the strategy is doing the product manager's job for them instead of doing the product leader's job. We're creating no room for innovation within the teams, from the engineers and from the designers, and we're not understanding the problem space enough. We're making big assumptions about the problem instead of ensuring, validating that and doing the right level of discovery. Another thing you mentioned. So let's have a look at the other side. We had a chat about the frustrations and the fears. Let's have a chat about the other side. If you're executing really good product strategy, you're actioning your product strategy really wonderfully, very effective and efficiently, what would the prioritizations, what would you want, how do you want it to be? What would, instead of frustrations, what are the wants? What's the opposite? If you could share that in the chat window, that'd be amazing. Assumptions validated in the market. Awesome. So we don't want it in red, do we? Validation. Yeah. We want to try and validate things better. In the market with delivered value. Lovely. What else do we want? I'm sorry, I'm making you think and do some work at 5:43. Prioritization is towards an outcome in mind. Great, love it. So we're focused on outcomes. Outcome driven, shall we call it? Clearly communicate business goals. Yeah, awesome. Just write clear goals. This pen is really thick and I can't make it thinner. Clear goals, great. Backed by data and user research, that would be nice. I'm going to capture that, if you don't mind, as evidence-based. I'm going to make evidence decisions. Love it. I want that too. Any more? Room for one more. Kirk, independence. Cool. If you don't mind, just because it's a trendier phrase, I'm going to call it autonomy. It's the word we talk about when we talk about autonomous teams. But I think it's probably the same as independence. Fantastic. So we move on to aspirations. So the opposite of our fears. If we have validation, if we have outcome-driven goals, if we have independence or autonomy, if we've got clear business goals and we're making decisions based on evidence, what do we aspire to achieve? Oh, I love it. Value creation through innovation. Love it. Capture innovation, value creation. What else? Measurable impact, growth, profit, happy customers. Growth, happy customers. Fantastic. Cool. I think we're pretty aligned. I think we're all pretty aligned on what we think good looks like, which is awesome. So we're going to move on, and I'll try and help you think about how you can make this happen and how you can change your processes, and how you introduce something called the product VCP to help you achieve this. If that's all right with everyone, we're good. Just type ready and we'll move on. Nice to see some people type ready. Thanks. Makes me realize, helps me make sure you're all there still. So hard on a webinar compared to a live audience. Awesome. So a few opportunities I thought of. I want to see product development unlock, or product investment, whichever you prefer, unlock customer value. We want to create value for the customer. We want to solve problems that really matter. That's super important. So often we end up solving problems that don't actually matter to the customer. Sometimes they matter to us, or sometimes they only matter to one customer. We need it to matter to the market. And a few of you mentioned this. We want to empower teams with strategic direction so they can build amazing products. We want them to be either independent or autonomous, whichever phrase you prefer, but empowered. to go and do great stuff and drive that innovation. I'm going to skip this one because of time. The mistakes I see quite regularly. Some of the mistakes I see often is the product strategy just isn't understood by everybody. You've all hinted at this quite a lot. It's often a tactical response, hence the tactical response unit in the picture. We can't have that. That's not going to work if it's just tactics or if it's just reactive. We so often fail to determine what the word value means. I know so many teams who've got some sort of strategy and then they prioritize it. They come up with a lovely strategy. It's really good. It's based on some good research. It's written up beautifully. It's normally quite comprehensive, hard to read. There's a lot of it, hard to digest for everybody in the business. And then we end up prioritizing things onto a roadmap and we use some sort of framework to do it, whichever you prefer. Some I see regularly is things like RICE, not necessarily my favorite, but something a lot of people use. And in those frameworks, we always have something, somewhere we have the word value. In RICE, it's called impact, it's the same thing. We have some score, some estimate, some measure of this value we're going to create, but we haven't defined what value means. And that is a real problem when it comes to actioning your strategy, because your strategy might have declared what value meant quite nicely, but it's not in a way that can be used day to day or week by week or in quarterly planning meetings. It's not in a way that can be used to help set those priorities really clearly. So instead, we end up, because it's ill-defined, we end up with whoever can articulate value best being the most influential in prioritization meetings. And I'm not sure about everybody else, but the people who I experience who are the very best at explaining and articulating value are salespeople, because that's their job. If they're not, their job is to express value. And if they can't do that very well, if they're not great at articulating that, they're probably not great salespeople and they're not going to be in those conversations. So we want those people to have perhaps a little over bias and over influence sometimes when value isn't well defined. And that can often lead to these reactive or responsive, this reactive or tactical prioritization, and suddenly something for a customer instead of the market being really big. So that's a huge issue. And then again, we confuse strategy with solution. We forget that what we're not trying to, if we want to set a strategy, we're setting a direction of how we're going to create value through the product, how the product is going, how our investment in product is going to support the business goals and help us achieve our business objectives. What we're not doing is, by saying how we're going to do it, isn't saying exactly what features we're going to build. So we've got to work out a way of how do we articulate that plan without listing out a load of features, which is also really tricky if you're a product leader in the room, because you end up committing to a bunch of features to your peers and to your boss. You end up committing to that roadmap full of features, even though you're not sure if they're the right ones, because they aren't all validated. We haven't been able to, the product teams haven't done that work. We end up not providing anything else to commit to because our strategy isn't articulated in a way we commit to it as a deliverable. So we need to find a way to marry that up. We need to find a way to commit to our strategy without committing to the exact solution. We need to be accountable to deliver our strategy without being accountable for exactly which features we're going to build. Otherwise, we're stuck. We're never going to be able to innovate. The teams are never going to be empowered. So, all right, does that make sense? You agree so far? Some thumbs up, some yeses would do on the meeting chat, so I know that we're all in the same place. Thanks, Alexandra. So let's talk about the value creation plan. What it is first. Well, you can take a picture of this if you're interested. There's a white paper that covers this in great detail that Andrea Sayers and I wrote, and it's available. So if you want that, just screen grab the URL and you can go and get it later. Or it's on the website. It's on the right to left website under resources. It also means everything I talk about, you don't have to take notes because it's all there in that document. To think about some of the challenges and problems that we're solving, let's just think about it a slightly different way for a second so we can then see where the VCP fits in so nicely. Just think about the journey of a new product, whether it's a new startup, whether it's a brand new product line, a new business. What normally happens is we look to solve a problem and we start to try and solve it in a certain place, and we iterate to gain traction. And often that takes time, and we don't get the traction straight away, and we have to keep iterating until we find it. But at some point, we start to get traction and we're starting to solve a problem. Hopefully we know what the problem is, and hopefully we know how we're solving it. And at that point, it gets more funding. If we're inside an enterprise, or if we're a startup, we're going to get investment. And then the challenge is to scale. When we scale, often we're driven down the route of broadening the market. We might still be in the same market segment. Let's say we're still serving, say, retailers, but instead of serving independent small retailers, now we're serving chain retailers, or now we're serving supermarkets, or something different, something wider. And the key thing here is the needs of our initial niche, who've got really like the product and we're getting good traction with, and we're finding it valuable. That niche, as it's got bigger, we aren't serving their needs quite as well. And often that means we end up with, as it shows here, amber, not such a strong fit. Unfortunately, when that happens, we are quite often driven by desperation, fear, and trying to do the right thing. Our sales and marketing teams will often end up, and our leadership end up taking it wider. So we make the niche even bigger. The pool is bigger, so we can fish bigger. There's more fish to get. We'll get a couple of sales because we've got great sales teams, but the fit, how well we serve their needs, is getting worse. And we end up with slow growth. To put it a different way, if you prefer graphs, we reach that scale point where revenue over time is starting to increase. We have the aspiration of that growth curve, the typical hockey stick. We go get funding on that growth curve. But unfortunately, we don't continue down that curve. We end up with average growth. And that's really annoying. And it's also often hidden because we don't see the growth, because we don't see the lost opportunity sometimes, because we're like, well, we're still growing. We must be doing something well, but we're not. And that's the product momentum gap. And more scarily, the further down that average growth line we go, the bigger the product momentum gap gets. At some point, there's a point of no return, and it's going to be impossible as an organization or as a product line to get back onto that growth curve. It's a mixture of contracts that we're not willing to cancel by killing some features. It's a mixture of tech debt and various other things that make it very difficult, almost impossible, to get back if we let this happen for too long. A better way, of course, would be as we realize we're going wider with our niche, and we realize we're not solving the customer's problems as well as we could, is to learn and do good product discovery about that market so that we are solving the problem well, and we're getting then high growth in that wider market, and then expanding and rinse and repeat. That's the alternative approach, which is obviously what we want to achieve. I'm going to skip that too. So the VCP is all about understanding the value assumptions. And most good product strategies, when you read them, are very good at picking up the business strategy and articulating the company goals, and then saying how the customer will get value, this bit, and expressing this value assumption here, that if the customer gets value through our product, the company is going to hit its goals. And normally the product strategy stops here. Okay. And often very well, and many times with really good evidence and data, sometimes not, but often really, really good job normally of this piece. And we understand it really well. Unfortunately, this leaves a bunch of, if we think about customer value, and then we think about how we're going to action and execute our product strategy, it leaves a lot of unknowns. It leaves a lot of assumptions for the product squads and for the product manager and the engineers to work out. It leaves too many assumptions. There's a lot of unknowns left still. Instead, we need to let our strategies extend a little and articulate them slightly further by understanding the value assumption between the behaviors our customers are going to, their change behavior or their new behaviors, thanks to us giving them new features, and how that relates to customer value. Then we can really articulate the product strategy in a way people can action. So I'll try to explain that in a slightly different way. If I'm a marketeer, for example, I'll have goals here for the company, the same company goals, and then I'll have my marketing strategy. And let's say I'm focused in a SaaS business, and my focus is around lead gen. I'll have a strategy of how I'm going to generate leads and how they're going to deliver value to the business. But I don't jump straight to the leads. I'll explain how we're going to get sales and how many of the leads we need. And then I'll have a approach of how I'm going to generate leads and what my campaigns might be, or my campaign strategy might be. The thing I'm responsible for when I run an ad campaign, for example, are these leads. And the value chain I've expressed is that they're going to, with sales doing their job well, create sales, and in turn that will hit company goals. In product, we tend not to think about the value chain properly. We think closer, we stop at the company value, customer value, we stop here. So what I want to encourage is that we don't stop there. We express our strategy in terms of what our product teams, like marketing teams, can create leads, in the sense of what our product teams can actually do. And all product teams can do is release features or update features. And when we do that, we change customer behavior. The feature is obviously the output. The feature is the output. The customer behavior is the outcome. So if we want to action and execute our strategy effectively and with speed and with focus and without waste and make a difference and change people's lives, we really need to understand these value assumptions in the middle. Which behaviors are going to create customer value? And then we can target our teams to create those behaviors through the features that they build. And that gives the teams direction and plenty of opportunity to innovate. But it doesn't give them carte blanche. It gives them suitable guardrails, strategic guardrails to do that. And if we're going to do this, it means we've got to define these value assumptions and we've got to align everybody around them. So the value assumptions are the key. And those value assumptions defined in this way, the product impact is created by changing the customer action or behavior in some way. We want to understand what the customer action is, how we're going to modify it, and that's what bigger customer value that impacts, that's going to generate. We can agree those assumptions amongst our peers, amongst senior leadership, and align around those assumptions. We can let our strategies we can list our strategy out as something we can work on to change and commit to, rather than leaving out the last part that means we can't action it and leaving that to the teams themselves. So let's skip that. What does that look like? Well, that looks like understanding our business objectives and the values we need to create, and then taking it a bit further and taking one of those values off the previous page and exploring how a customer would see that value. What would they recognize? What would be different in their business? How they would measure that value? What behaviors the customer is going to do that will create that value? And can our product do it? And then lastly, are we the right people to do it? Are we best positioned? Is there somebody else better positioned, or a partner? Or maybe this isn't a good thing for us to focus on. And we explore each of these values, and there'd be more of them normally, not just four, it's just four to make it fit in a page. We'd explore them all in this depth until we can come to the priorities, come to the ones we all agree strategically are the right ones to grow and approach. And that's just that. Normally, this isn't new work. Normally, this is just reframing the product strategy you've already built. But when we can do that, we then end up with a list of these assumptions and modifiers. And normally what then happens is we go through those and consolidate them and remove any outliers. There might be a couple that have snuck in that are really edge cases. So we want to get rid of those. They're just for the edges of the market, not a typical customer. There might be two or three that are very granular. and we can roll them up into something higher level. In the end, normally when we do this with teams, we end up with 20 or 30 of these, and then we'll work through with them until we end up with 5 to 7. And when we've got 5 to 7 of them, then we can look at working out what a leading indicator for each one, so we can measure it. And that's a leading indicator that's showing that that behavior is happening. Once we've got that, we can then start tracking it and manage teams to execute our strategy effectively. This allows us to make decisions about prioritization in a new way, where we've got value in that prioritization formula, whatever prioritization framework you use, or impact, you might call it. We can now use our value indicator to do that, which I don't think I've got a picture on. No, I haven't. But we can use a scorecard and look at, estimate and evaluate and find evidence to support it of how much a particular strategic initiative might impact a number of the VCPs. And that then gives us a better way of understanding whether our strategic initiatives are high value or low value. It takes away the ambiguity of value. It allows us to consider it in the same way. It means that when we're considering value, we're considering strategic value. We still might end up prioritizing some work that's tactical, but we'll be doing it on purpose, not by mistake. And when we do it, we'll be understanding the strategic value we're giving up in favor of it, which is a much more interesting discussion in a prioritization meeting than just, we need this new thing for this contract we want to try and sign tomorrow. It changes the conversation significantly. Done well, we build the VCP collaboratively with other senior executives so that we get alignment. And done well, people will start self-selecting and not suggesting things that are not strategic anymore, because they understand the strategy. It's got to make these numbers go up. And then finally, not only does it help us make OKRs work, because our objectives for our teams, the outcomes are the behaviors, things they can actually impact, and we can use VCP indicators to help frame our objectives for OKRs. It also means we can review our strategy at regular stages to review whether our plan, because our strategy is just the plan, to see if the plan is working. And what do I mean by that? Well, our VCP is going to track leading indicators. We'll know regularly if they're going up really quickly because they're leading. But what we don't know is if our assumptions were right, our strategic assumptions. You always have them. They just might not always be written down. Here, I'm getting you to write them down as value assumptions in a specific way. They're always there, though, even if they're unsaid. And we normally don't have a way of reviewing them to find out if they were right. One, because they're not, they're abstract, they're not clearly written down, so that makes them hard to review. But secondly, how do we measure it? Well, now we can look and go, well, these value indicators, these leading indicators have gone up. Have the lagging indicators of business value that they're further down the value chain that they connect to, have they gone up too? So we can start to explore and challenge what happens. We can have a good discussion about if an indicator is going up, but the lagging indicator is not moving or going down, and then debate and review whether our assumptions are correct, whether they're wrong, whether they can be improved, whether we've learned new things, and and then allows us to hone the strategy and tweak it or get rid of things out of the strategy instead of continuously just carrying on with the same approach. So that allows us to very easily quarterly or half yearly evolve the strategy. So it's not one set plan written, dreamt up in November, committed to in December, and started in January that we just carry on doing regardless. It means our strategy is now agile and lean, and just like the work, and it sets our teams up to work agile and lean with the guardrails of delivering those behaviors, which when you articulate your strategy as behaviors, there are lots of different ways the team might achieve the same goal, many different ways, and lots of exciting innovation can come from it. Let's just skip up a few, go back. I'd love to hear if any of this is making any sense to you, and what you think so far. Any takeaways? If you want to unmute and chat, feel free, or if you prefer typing it in the chat window, do that. Any takeaways? I'll just grab a quick drink of water. It's neat, but you don't hear me slurping water. Great, Alexandra. Thank you. Really pleased it's making some sense. Yeah, some examples. I can talk a couple quickly. The best way to get examples will be me and Andrea writing a book on this entire topic, and in there's 2 quite meaty case studies. We're at the final editing stage of the book right now, so it will be out pretty soon. So please keep an eye out for that. But let's think about some real life examples. Let's do it at the product impact level. So it might be that the behavior, the customer value we're trying to create. Let's say we're a SaaS business with we're an e-marketing business. We're an MarTech company selling an email marketing system or a CDP of some sort. I pick email because everybody understands email rather than it being something that's industry specific. And the customer value may well be that we're trying to create is to grow sales. I'm going to sell more stuff when our clients send an email. We want them to sell more stuff when they use our email technology than when they use someone else's. So we need to think about the behaviors there. One of the behaviors might be we want to help people send. We might come up strategically that more targeting is better. So we want to help people. One of the things we want to do is we want the action to be that people will send. How do I phrase this? People send campaigns. Targeted. We want to send targeted campaigns, and the modifier is we want them to be smaller, so they're more targeted, so smaller number of people in each target, and we want to send more of them. That's more. So we're sending more campaigns to fewer people per campaign, but overall the same number. And that might be a behavior we want to achieve because we believe in from our business product strategy that driving more targeting campaigns is going to drive more click through and sale. Another behavior we might want to change, we might simply want to help them write emails, we might simply want to help them get more CTR, more click through, and people to click on more emails. More conversion. And that's still going to grow sales. Now, if I was setting that as a focus for my teams, there's lots of ways that they might increase click-through, lots of features. It might be that they come up with an idea they might learn that their clients are writing terrible headlines, and they're going to come up with a feature to score headlines. Or it might, in the email, the subject line, or it might be that they're going to play with some AI chat tools and come up with a way of automating the headline for their marketeers, so they don't have to write it. There's loads of different ways they could do it. It might be that click-through has nothing to do with the content. It might be that there's some problems with delivery. We're not delivering enough. We have some technical delivery issues, networking issues. We want to solve that. There's lots of potential, still lots of scope for great ideas and for innovation, but we're setting the strategic guardrails of how we want to spend our money and where it might go. Does that help, Alexandra? Great, cool. Has anyone else got any takeaways? Any ways you think, oh, that could help me? Or any questions? Well, it's been really quick. We've gone through it super fast tonight, but hopefully you can see that by taking on board the VCP and creating a product VCP, you're going to help align your teams. You're going to help align, most importantly, as well, senior stakeholders and your C-suite if you do it correctly in the right way, if you do it in a very collaborative way. And once everyone's aligned, then around your product strategy, and then we can execute it more cleanly, more easily, with less distraction, less agendas that are in the way. And we can use both, we can be accountable for it. So we can be accountable for delivering those behavioral changes instead of being accountable for delivering features on a roadmap. We can track our performance and we can validate that that performance is having the impact we hoped it would, which changes the way we would typically, a lot of businesses think about how the product function operates. If we do this well, we start to really execute faster, build around shorter scopes. We get to really help with continuous discovery inside the teams, and we get to innovate, and we get to build better products that are really supporting the business goals and the customer. Yes, I'm going to make this recording available, no problem, and I will do that certainly. And again, just to finish up, because we're out of time, and I don't want to keep people late on a evening. I'm sure you've got things to do, like eat dinner. So everything we've talked about is detailed in the white paper that's at this link. So please feel free to grab that, and it will go through everything we've just discussed. So will the video. And if anyone's interested in talking with me more, we can set up a 20-minute chat to go through and help you plan how you might go forward with the VCP, which I do regularly. Sometimes people need some extra help, and then that's when we might enter into helping you with either coaching or with our momentum strategy program. But often it's just a quick plan that means you can get on with it yourselves, which is even better. So do feel free to reach out. My email and details are all over the website. Thank you so much for turning up. Really, really appreciate it.